call the meeting to order. And we can review November's minutes.
I'll make a motion to accept.
The only thing I would change is on, under the scheduled additional workday. It says I reached out to the town engineers in Conway and also the parking code enforcement officer. I just wanted to put that in there. That's who the other person was.
Who's that?
Linda Burns.
Okay.
Thanks.
I've got one small change. Under Wildcat River, it says the town and the foresters share the responsibility, and it should be the town and the Forest Service. Because that kind of makes it sound like it's the town forester's responsibility.
Okay. With that same correction in the last sentence.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
It's too hot.
Can solve that problem.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. I guess so on to Prospect Farm. Did you have any further?
I don't. I decided I would approach the selectmen in the spring to have the parking lot changed up there, and I'll approach the Forest Service at that time to move the gate, because there's no sense in getting that on the highway department's agenda at this time of year. At least I don't think there's a lot of sense in that. So I will get on the selectmen's agenda sometime in the spring to tee that up.
Okay. Yes, we did.
And I did, one of the things, the Ski Touring Foundation will try to do the clearing. They're behind trying to clear all the blowdowns and stuff on the trails right now, but if they do get up to do the Wildcat Valley Trail, they will come down and try to thin out some of those view sheds that we talked. And I gave Ellen Chandler the map of where those are, so hopefully we'll be able to hit those before the snow flies.
Okay. That fell off my list too. I don't like putting flagging up, but I feel like it's self-explanatory what would need to be cut.
I think the same thing.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, one of the people who'll be doing the cutting is Karen, who works for the Forest Service in the summer, and
Okay.
And as I mentioned, I was up there recently, you know, the big view shed which has the Simone picture and stuff at some point, which the Ski Touring Foundation probably would not get to, is the lower, once you get down below the mold field, you know, those saplings that are coming up now are starting to get up to the height. In the winter, it's not an issue, it's not a, so a skier can see through that, can't because it's all deciduous, but as in the next year or two, that's probably gonna need to be cut back down, as it was originally, or those trees are gonna get so high, they will start to block that out, and better to do it now than when you've got big trees in front of you. And that, I will say this, the use of that, the number of people who hike up to take in that view shed is pretty high. I mean, I hike up in that area frequently, and you see a lot of people, it's well known as a great view for a short hike.
Yep.
I don't know if others have been up there and experienced that, but,
I go up there all the time in the winter. I probably go up there once or twice a week in the winter, and I almost never go in the summer, so it's funny.
yeah.
I always think like, oh, it's gonna be too wet or too muddy, or, you know, like grass, you know, like high grass on the way up, but I guess I didn't realize with enough feet, it's probably all right.
And the picnic table at the Hall's Ledge is probably like the ones at the Jackson Falls, is pretty worn out.
Because it's been that way for a
Yeah,
long
it's
time.
I don't know whether we want to keep it or just, you know, get out of the picnic table business.
Yeah.
That's one that I think I would be okay removing and just letting it not be anything, because I don't think that's a spot that people.
I mean, when I go up there, I just go in, sit down, take a look at the view and get up and go, but do I need it? No.
I definitely used to stand on it.
Yeah, I definitely stand on it.
I stand on it.
Yeah,
as a better view.
because you
Yeah.
Which is risky.
Yeah.
But you're standing on it because the view shed is blocked, yeah.
And you guys are just going to go mountain goats. Have to be on the
But what do
highest
people
point.
think? Should we haul that out at some point?
Yeah, I mean, it's falling apart, we should.
Yeah.
And it always seemed like a mystery where it came from also, like the other ones.
I mean, I could ask the Ski Touring Foundation when they're grooming through this sometime, but
Load it back up.
piston
on the
belly
truck.
to throw it on and
Get
get
it
it
out
out.
there. Yeah, no, I think I'd be fine with that.
Isn't it falling apart anyway? Like you said, falling apart anyway.
It is.
So
The other
It's a
one,
hazard.
yeah, the other one on the main view is still in good condition.
Mhm.
And somebody's moved it from lower down up to almost the trail so that you can see out from it.
Yeah, Rick did that when he.
Did Rick do it? Yeah.
And that makes more sense to me to have a picnic table there than it would at the Hall's Ledge view. Yeah, I'd be fine getting rid of it.
Yep, done.
If you want, I'll ask them if, you know, if it's not frozen in, if they can pull it out at some point.
Okay. Do they groom down that far? Would they have the machine that far down, or?
They do at times groom down, yeah.
Mhm.
Down
I
to
mean-
the viewpoint?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's big pretty regularly.
Okay.
I mean, they do quail and boggy, and if they've got time, I mean, the grooming up there is dependent on how deep the snow is and how fast the groomer can move. If they're getting through fast, they'll do that whole loop, and if they don't get through fast, they'll just do boggy, because the amount they can groom up there is really dependent on how deep the snow is and how much work they gotta do on the
Right.
snow and off, but they're gonna do the quail and boggy first.
Okay. So does anyone have any pressing things, or, I mean, I think we're probably gonna go into winter mode up there,
Any day.
hopefully, fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Or just, I guess the only thing coming up ahead is if we wanted to think about doing another winter orchard trimming, it's just getting that scheduled. We're just on the calendar, so we're,
Yeah. I can talk with the school again?
with school, I think when we had talked about it before, it's just, it's going to need several years, and
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think I'm sure the school would want to do it again. I need to talk to the 5-6 teacher. And when they go up, there's not a ton of, you know, like,
Right.
not a ton, it's more the experience.
Yeah.
Not a ton of actual pruning that takes place, but,
How much could we use them to drag, I mean, this last time, but if somebody, you know, who knows how to trim is trimming, and the kids are dragging it, it'd be more than they just go up and watch somebody do it and then
yeah,
come back.
It
They'd
takes
actually-
an exercise.
Yeah.
yeah. Have them haul it out in the woods, yeah.
Okay. I guess,
I think we did that in like March. It was towards the end of the
Yeah, that's the right time to do
season.
it.
So, I will reach out to John Marshall again. I should write that down. What was that? Maybe with it.
I'm always passing John at some point, but like, I haven't talked to you in a long time, we should probably catch up at some point.
He's a very, very busy guy.
Is that the teacher?
Yeah.
He's the 5-6 teacher.
How many kids were in 5-6?
This year, there are 11, I believe. There's one student who comes periodically,
Okay.
so I think if you count that student,
Yeah,
it's
that's
11.
That's
So yeah,
good.
that is good. Yeah, they've got a couple real big classes. There's I think 14 fourth graders,
Wow.
13 or 14 just fourth graders, which is big.
Let's see, each does a drag 2 or 3 times.
Okay. So I guess if there's nothing else, move on to Jackson Falls. Wood chips got spread, which was very satisfying.
You did a nice job there.
Ken and his son came down and helped, so
Oh, excellent.
we
Impressive.
we've got a lot more than I was just hoping to tackle, but we got it all taken care of. So everything from the handicap spot down to the fire road has been re-spread.
So that work.
So
We still have the upper pile.
the upper pile is still there.
Yeah.
It was
Frozen.
a little frozen,
Frozen?
so we did not tackle that, but it'll be there waiting for us.
In the spring.
So, and the only thing that I really noticed there when we were there is picnic table broken.
Which one?
The one by the handicap, the top one, just the
Yeah.
seat, the slats
Okay,
broke, so we pulled it.
okay. Maybe we should move the middle one to where that is. Because if we move the middle one, because that's where people, just a thought.
Yeah, I mean, is it imperative to do that
No,
now
no.
or?
Just a thought. The reason why I'm saying that is because I see more people using the first picnic table, whereas the second one is awfully close to the trail, and I think I'd like to see if we can narrow the trails there a little bit. Just a thought.
Be a good idea and be easy to do it this spring.
Yeah. I mean,
Is
well,
the chain locked?
the chain can be cut.
Yeah.
easily.
Is it locked? I can't remember.
I think I think it's just got a threaded bolt
Yeah.
around it.
Ben has tools. And a van.
I would say I have tools, it's whether I remember to have them with me on that time, so, okay, we can do that, or if I have a free moment at some point. I guess I just put down goals of like things that we want to see get done there next year, or just kind of have a roadmap rather than,
Hit or miss type of thing.
well, just, it takes up a lot of discussion time, and if we know what we want to be doing there, I think that's,
I have some suggestions, some thoughts.
yeah.
Okay, so you guys can say yay or nay or whatever, but my thought is narrow some of the trails. And the way you do that is by bringing in some, doing some more planting. And one of the things I was doing, was bringing in some soil and see if we can't plant some ferns. Then you order them early and then you plant like the roots. Because there are places there where the sod would, I don't think the sod would works as well because it's too shaded. But there are ferns there already.
Okay.
But there are places that you can order the fern roots from if you do it in the spring.
Well, let me give you a lesson learned in the Alpine area. You have fairly large groups that are hiking down to the falls, family groups, etc. And the Forest Service has restrictions on how wide trails can be in the Alpine area. It's too narrow. And because so much hiking, and particularly at like the falls, you get what I call social hiking, which is side by side or 2 people. So we observe that when you narrow the trail with scree walls, what you think you're doing actually starts to work against you because they just jump out and start walking next to the scree wall. I don't think you want to narrow those trails too much more based on how I observe how people walk through there, because you will put a lot of time in there, but they're going to be insistent on walking side by side unless you really started to put in, you know, fencing that's up high. I think you need to think twice about how narrow you want to make those trails versus how that area is being used.
I was thinking of certain areas, which is by the handicapped parking space. Up there's this big place that we fill with wood chips every year, and I was thinking there's already a very narrow trail that goes off one side. So I wasn't talking necessarily about narrowing the trails going the other way. It's just...
You're talking about downstream from that?
well, upstream, that whole area, yeah, mostly I was thinking upstream, because it's just a big open area with wood chips, and I think we could do
I mean,
that
coming down from the handicap.
from the handicap.
You need a fair amount of width with a hill like that if somebody's wheeling somebody down
But I'm
Yeah.
not talking about the trail down, I'm talking when you get down,
to where the picnic table is.
not that far, sorry.
Okay.
But there's, you know where we put the two plantings in,
Yeah.
the sod on either side? So that part, from the tree up, there's an area in there that could definitely be narrowed.
Yeah,
So, I'm not talking the whole thing, I totally get what you're saying, that
Yeah.
you need some width up there. I was just thinking that if you look, there's just a lot of wood chips, and I think we could do better.
Okay. Well, I guess looking at future planting areas, I like the way that we've like continued to block off where some of those social trails or, you know, shortcuts down to the ledges, if we can kind of, because I think now we've either just stacked brush in front of it, if we had something that didn't look like, or something that couldn't be moved out of the way quite so easily, or I guess, well, the aesthetic barrier versus the hard, like, just stacked up brushes, don't go this way. That's a solid message.
Yeah, brush can be hard, although it's easy to come by. Some people say you need like a 4 foot high by 8 foot deep pile of brush to truly stop people, like when you're blocking a trail,
Really?
like when you reroute a trail.
I can believe that, yeah.
But I think you can do it with lesser amounts too.
And I was also thinking of adding on to the downstream side of the sod that we've already put in there. You could block off quite a bit of trails by doing that. I think there are like 2 or 3 you could block off by just adding on to what we've already done.
Okay.
And it's above the water line, as best I can tell. I went and checked it out during one of the last floods.
I mean, my suggestion on that is, I mean, this is the old Guy Waterman thing from years ago. You know, when he lived on Franconia Ridge, they looked at, okay, this is where people want to go to a lookout. Let's not fight it, let's build a little bump outs and that sort of stuff. Does it make sense to go out there and watch how people are using it and then start thinking in terms of doing the layout as opposed to just starting with, you know, unless we've got something like a, you know, endangered plan or something like that where you definitely need to protect it, but it is a popular area and you have to think in terms of how people move as well as just, let's keep narrowing it. That's the advice I would give, and some of that's just based on how we tried to control use in the Alpine area.
With something like a game camera.
That actually brings up something I had been thinking about for these goals,
Do you have to post it?
Yeah,
Probably.
which is, I don't know how you would do this, but what I've been thinking along the same lines is it'd be really nice to be able to actually monitor and get a count of like, because we, like, I feel like when we talk about this a lot, it's a lot of like, oh, like everyone's parking legally, or no one's parking legally, or it was really busy, or it's not that busy, and I don't know how you facilitate this without just, you know, just a whole lot of hours of volunteers, but just getting a count of like, okay, like how many cars are here, you know, like when's the busiest times, how many cars are parked legally, how, like, where are people going, just like really getting, like, to be able to like come back and look at it and be like, oh, like peak time is between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock on Saturday afternoons on a hot day, and so like that's like the time when if we ever had a river steward that was a volunteer town person, that's when you would be like, oh, we need someone there that time, or that's when we would need the, you know, like we've noticed like at noon on Fridays is when the most amount of people are parked illegally. That's when we should really ask the police department to go up there and look. And I don't know how you do that without like a terrible amount of volunteer hours or, you know, people really willing to monitor, but it seems like that's, you know, we're doing all these things, but it seems like that's a key component that'd be really helpful to have information on. You know, as we try and figure out where people should park, where they should go, is looking at, well, where are they parking and really be able to back it up, you know, where are they going?
Been a little creepy to have a camera there though.
So I don't know, yeah, so I don't know how we do that, but like, it just, I was thinking like, I was going back to think about the last conversations we've had, and it's like, oh, it'd be so nice to know, like, you know, like, oh, well, people ignore the tow, or people don't ignore the tow, and it'd be nice to be like, oh, actually, like,
I bet you.
X amount of people
Yeah,
just ignored it, or, you know, whatever.
but I bet you,
Active
we,
management.
When I say,
Yeah, but I don't know how to do that without like,
Well, I think when you get into looking at it from resource protection, probably the most critical thing that we need to protect there is the roots to the larger trees, because that's, if you lose those, I mean, those roots start to get damaged, you lose your big trees, and that's part of
right,
the overall ambience up there. And that's what the wood chips are doing, is basically building it up and preserving the root system of the key trees up there. And the second observation I would have is for the amount of use up there, you actually, between stuff that was done well before I came on here and some of the stuff we've done, is it's incredibly good shape right now, considering the volume of use. I mean, we don't have, you know, formerly there were all kinds of little goat paths coming down from the parking lots and that sort of stuff. That system that has been set up is actually functioning quite well. And when we did the transplants, that's functioning quite well. But I would caution about trying to constrict too much, because there is the capacity that is determined by the number of parking spots up there. And you do not want to try to over-restrict versus the amount of parking we have and the number of people who will be there. Because it can start to work against you, as we know in the Alpine area. I mean, the thing we fought with the Forest Service nonstop is you gotta break your regs about keeping narrow, because now when they jump out and walk on both sides of the screen wall, you're losing more Alpine than if you widen the trail enough to let people walk side by side.
so do you think would it be worth to go up there and identify which of those big tree roots are at most risk? And if there are ones, then look at those for areas of either hardening or for...
Well, that's what we were looking at when we were
Yeah.
dumping wood chips this last session up there. I mean, that's the first thing I kept looking at is, where are the roots that are most at risk, and let's make sure we, you know, cover those, because that's, and, you know, probably the ones that are at risk is when you come down from the, and I have to go back and check, but when you come down from the handicap and then you're going upstream in that narrow area,
Mhm.
you know, in through there, those trees are much more, and some of those trees are getting hit because when you get high water, the root systems are getting exposed as well. But once you damage those roots, there's a lot of, you know, and a lot of these trees that bust off, you've got spruce in there where you get butt rot in the spruce and that sort of stuff, and they'll snap off.
I forgot what the hydrologist said. I mean, that was years ago,
What
right?
they-
When
what they said
hydrologists
is-
come look at that section, because that's, you know, I feel like that's the area we've always been concerned about.
Yeah.
Because the high water just is beating that zone.
But there's nothing we're gonna do to change
No,
that,
he
because
said-
it's only gonna get worse, not better.
But I mean, I think that's where we started some of the plantings in
Yeah.
that zone, was
We-
because of that.
We definitely did, and there's definitely some sections that I look at now that I'm like, oh, I put plants there, and now that's just like water.
But that's what provides a lot of shade in that makes it nice when you're
Yeah.
up there, as opposed to just getting your brains backed out.
Yeah, so the soil scientist was the one who told us to narrow down and eliminate the trails and that sort of thing. And the hydrologist was basically, when he came and talked to us, he offered suggestions for hardscaping. And I think a bunch of us were just like, you know, putting, you know, the barriers in the water and that sort of thing. It just seemed, he was talking like cement and stuff like that, and we're just like, yeah, well, that just does not sound good.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think that was anything we were interested in doing.
Yeah, because it seems like that, maybe when the water is coming downstream, when it leaves that top pool, that high water, and does that big right sweep, and then it comes back by the bench, like that's the area that's just gonna keep growing and growing.
Yeah.
But I forget, because there were some estimates that I think he gave on how long that would take and what
And
water
he-
flow
yeah.
produced it.
Yeah, and he suggested things like trying to put in the the dogwood stems and the spring, and I tried that. I think there are 2 left. It's tricky. But it would be kind of fun to go up there and, you know, we could each look and see what we think would be beneficial. I'd be happy to point out where I think we benefit from doing a little bit more planting, and you guys could say yes or no, or.
Yeah. I was amazed driving by the other day, I mean, back to your point about observations, in that section, there were very few people there, but all like 4 people were like not on our path. They were like on the slabby rocks where it's like, I mean, where it's dry unless it's high water. And they very all clearly had made a choice of like not walking on the uneven ground or out on the rocks. And I was like, great, I mean, it's not maybe what we wanted, but it's a durable surface at least.
Mhm.
Well, we had an interesting observation when we were moving wood chips. It just, people's quick hit. So we were moving wood chips. We had a cone in the road, and Ken was parked in the handicap parking spot, and a woman,
With a placard.
yeah, coming downhill, so traveling on the opposite side of the road, pulled in across, parked behind Ken in front of 2 no parking signs, left her car running,
Ran down, took a
ran
picture.
down, took a picture, looked around, went back out to the left, and just like,
She did thank us for the good work we were doing.
I didn't hear that part.
She did.
Maybe I was just glowering too much at her.
I can see Ben's glower.
But it was just like, this is what we're up against. Just like,
Yeah.
you've made a decision that you're gonna do this. It doesn't matter.
I mean, that's the universal track. No, my car's running, I'm not parked.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Well, that's like you'd watch cars stop at the Kendall Field, and stop to take a picture of Mount Washington. Leaves the car right in the middle of the lane, you know, gets out, takes a picture, it's like,
Yeah, so, keeping that in mind if someone's going to stop, not follow the rules, there's nothing we can do about that.
Except give him a ticket.
I mean, I couldn't give them I thought I gave a really, really good side eye. I was like- But, yeah, okay. Has anyone heard anything about how parking lot stewards are working in the area? It gets pitched around quite a bit, or I've heard. I mean, AMC was doing it in Franconia, or who's?
No, what happened in Franconia is, I mean, it's a long story, but the short version is parking on 993 is illegal. It's illegal to park on the interstate. And after they were parking, you know, a mile up and down from the Lafayette area. And then the state actually finally stepped up, because that's actually not on Forest Service land, that's actually on state park land. The state instituted, number 1 is the police came in, but number 2 is they put a car shuttle a van shuttle from the Cannon parking lot down and back. That ceased, I believe, Tom, you probably know better than I, that ceased during the COVID, and I think they picked it up. And there is a charge for that, but the Park Service, the state park system was still losing money on the shuttle from what I understood. And Tom, I don't know if you have better knowledge than I, but that's.
I mean, they have little, basically parking lot guard shacks that I've never seen staffed. And I've heard rumors that start and stop of like, okay, now it's gonna be a weekend only charge, there'll be someone there, and I don't know if they have an educational person on the weekend to tell people to go park at Cannon to catch the shuttle. But they do have the little steward buildings that they built within the last 2
And they
years.
they took a year to actually let the public know, because a lot of that parking, they were relying on mass media, because I was in, before I retired, I was in on those committees with the Forest Service, the concept is give 1 year, they were putting notices on people's car that they were gonna start to tow and this, that, and the other stuff, they didn't just start finding. So, and then social media started to work in your favor, and then, next year, if you're here, your car will be towed, which is the last thing you want when you come down from a hike and no car. But they did educate, as opposed to just lowering the hammer. And I actually give the state pretty good credit for dealing with what is a really difficult challenge.
Yeah, I feel like the falls is small enough, if we had a volunteer, they could do all of it, parking and general education. Diana's Pass is the only other one I know of with staffed parking.
Well, they do, Conway has the, you know, parking enforcement officer, Linda Burns, and so she does that, and I think she can give tickets, and I think she can call the Conway PD and that sort of thing, if it needs to be a tow. And
Yeah, but they also, don't forget that they now charge to park at different places to help pay for that program. It's not like it's a,
Right.
I don't know, my feeling right now is after the 2-hour parking and the way that the police department, we've made a lot of progress, and, you know, if it gets worse, then we address it again, but I thought we made a lot of progress up there.
Yeah.
I think it's nice not having them park on Carter Notch when they don't park on Carter Notch, that's nice.
And the bridge, I think, is scheduled for replacement this coming year,
They didn't give us a date, they said soon.
soon, yeah.
Well, and the other thing we need to talk to somebody about, maybe Gary Allen, is they cut all the ferns down on the other side of the bridge. And I think I mentioned that before. I mean, the ferns aren't gonna come back, and the ferns aren't really hurting anybody. It's all part of the flora of the woods over there. It's really too bad.
Was that normal road clearing, or was
No,
that
the ferns-
prepping for
Yeah, but it's
bridge
not,
repair?
I think it was just normal road clearing because they were doing it in different places down Valley Cross.
Okay.
It just seems like the ferns have always been there, and now they're just totally cutting them down. And they're beautiful ferns, and they're just part of that area. But if you cut them down enough, they won't come back.
I'd imagine what a road agent would say is, we need to keep shoulders clear.
But they've been there forever, and they just cut them this past year. I've never seen them cut that before.
Well, that's what makes me think if it was that they were clearing out away from the footings, so in anticipation for it, but that's just
Yeah.
speculation, I don't know.
I would address this after they replace the bridge.
Yeah, well, just as something to keep in mind, if we can do plantings there, that might be a good place to put plantings, because where that got opened up, and you had pointed out, that's a way people access that side, and just because I had never accessed from that side, I didn't realize people were doing that, so that's a
Yeah.
good place to
Yeah.
just keep.
And that's what the ferns did. They hid the access. So they also
You're talking about
stabilized-
going down on the river left side,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so they stabilized the bank, they, you know, are part of the environment, the flora there, and they did hide the access on that side. Because the more people that go down, the more eroded it gets.
I would suggest that we take this up after the bridge is replaced, because
Yeah.
that whole environment is gonna be changed, and not to downplay what you're talking about, but I think,
Well, just as an opportunity to do a place for planting after it's been
Yeah.
disturbed,
Yeah.
so.
because that's gonna be, I think they're doing, are they doing the embankments, the abutments as well? I can't remember. I know the superstructure is being changed, but the abutments,
Their I can't, the entire scopes said that they were going to reface all of the.
that's what I thought, yeah.
So,
That's why I would say let's go back and take a look at replanning and trying to, because that's private property as well. I mean, once you're out of the town's road, right of way on the road. Because that side of the falls is not owned by the town.
I think it's probably all right of way over there, because it's not that far off the
Yeah.
road, you know.
But I think to do investments there now or to raise issues
No, no.
is just premature, knowing that major construction is gonna happen there.
okay. Anything else on that? Everyone, just be nice, pick up their trash. That's all I
I
ask.
will check about what's available for a sign to put on the little house that covers the porta potty about, and I bet we can buy one commercially very easily that just basically says, like when you and I up there, people pick up their dog shit, put it in a plastic bag, and then put it on the ground next to it, but it's, carry in, carry out, including your pet mess, as opposed to leaving your plastic bag for us.
Yeah, I can hear what Brian would say to that is you don't need to give signs for people to, they know there's some other psychic aggression going on there, but yes.
But usually when there's a sign there, they'll probably put it down at the picnic table, but yeah.
Throw it in the woods.
Speaking of which, one thing that I wanted to think about is the, not even passive change, but the kiosk, big kiosk, little sign on the kiosk, and it looks kind of weird visually. And so I don't want to put, you put too many things up and people stop looking at it. So I don't want to put too many words or too many things on it, but I was thinking if there's something else, like a small companion piece
Oh,
that needed to also get posted, we could move that thing over and put it so it just spatially looks a little nicer. Because was there today and I was like, kind of looks weird. Big kiosk, little sign right in
Too
the
bad we
middle.
couldn't do some sort of rotating thing,
So-
put in some plant or animal type or something for that season for people to look at.
Well, I just got to think about what that might be, because I don't want to put too much up there, because then people will just ignore all of it. But it looks like, it just kind of looks kind of weird, and I thought, oh, well, you can move the sign over a little bit and put something else there, and it'll be visually more appealing, and maybe there's some other piece of information that like really needs to get
I don't know if
put there.
vital information, but I was thinking that could be a good opportunity to have like a QR code for people to scan to get history,
Yeah,
answer all the questions. I'm sure that's all been compiled.
Yeah.
Also access to some of the art.
I mean, it could be as simple as a link just to the town website. I mean, there's like a page or two of the town's history, and then it falls on the town website.
And this winter, as I think I've said before, I'm willing to go in and take a look at the donation, all that stuff, the way we do with Prospect Farm, and
Mhm.
try to just update all of the management stuff we've done along with the history and stuff, and so we can compile it in one place like we do with Prospect. And I'll do that this winter.
I guess we can think of using that space as a little bit more community oriented.
Mhm.
As opposed to do or do
The-
this or do that, we'll just have something that might be more fun.
One of the things I also thought, and I'm not sure how if I like this or not, because I don't want two maps up there, but like now that I think about it, it's like, oh, it'd be nice if they had other, like, where else can I go? Like other parks in Jackson or other places that are like, oh, like, it's crazy here. Do you know that there's like the river walk or something like that? And I don't know, like, whether that's like another map of Jackson that shows all the places that are public and you can go, or what that is. But that had been something that occurred to me. It's like, I don't know, other places you could go.
Or would you show people to the old swimming pool? I don't know. The island swimming pool, the old swimming pool.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see what I can put together this winter, and then maybe we can put a QR or something, but then just go from that to the town website.
No, that's a good point. I think that's an underutilized resource we have now, so. Okay.
And I will, the Jackson Ski Touring Foundation sign maker, I will, because they're working on the trails right now, I'm not gonna, but I will have them make those signs before next spring so we can put them up.
Awesome. Great.
Gray's Inn, any, still there?
Still not there. Love that joke. Still not there.
Except for that mystery building.
Oh, yeah. I said I was gonna walk up there and look at the signs, and I didn't. So I wrote it down again this time. So I will go again and look to see if those signs need to come out. I think within a month I'd have time to do that.
Community garden, we're all set.
All buttoned up.
Okay.
Will you be doing signups for this coming year?
I have one spot available so far. I
Oh.
mean, the gardeners that are there now have until February, I think, to re-up, and then I'll,
You're just gonna do that through Jackson E-News then, or whatever?
yeah, and sometimes people just come up to me
Yeah.
and say they want it, I'm not being picky.
Yeah.
I guess just for the purpose of the town report, like, where's the vital, like, how many people have been involved with it, or roughly?
How many people? You mean how many users?
Well, yeah, just, it's something like, that's a hard, like, we have this many beds, this many people, this many pounds of broccoli.
Yeah, right. So we have 7 beds. The library's given up their bed because they just didn't use it very much. You know, they planted it and then just, that was it. So they gave up their bed. We had somebody else who signed up. And everybody else has said they want to re-sign up. So I still have 1 bed.
Does the grammar school have a bed?
No, they do not.
They've got 2 over there.
At
There's
the
garden
school.
beds at the school. Yeah,
That's
there's like 2 or 3 raised beds there.
Okay.
Um,
But like I was saying, they don't get to do it during the summer.
Because Lycum is leaving the library.
Right, yeah. Yeah, that's what's hard about the school beds is because they plant everything in the spring and then everyone leaves for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then they come back in the fall and sometimes there's still stuff there.
But do they do any rec programs that would be appropriate for?
Oh, so they have a new after-school coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, I don't know if they would want to use those beds first, but it's
Right.
possible that they might want to do.
They go to
like-
the library and then they go and do it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
but there is a new after-school coordinator.
Okay.
Owen McAllister, I think is his name.
That's just a bad choice of what they're planning. They should be planning stuff like lettuce or something. It goes in and is done by the time you graduate.
Yeah.
Well, they do potatoes, that's a big thing they always do,
Potatoes are fun.
because they harvest the potatoes in the fall.
I
That's
was
like
gonna
a
say
big,
something else that you
a
can just
big
put
thing
in
that
and walk
they do.
away from
Yeah.
in the fall.
So potato people's get them.
Okay. I don't. Still looking for water, like a good water testing protocol or something that could be a citizen science sort of thing. I would like to have that still on our menu or agenda.
DES has a volunteer citizen science, like they mostly do biomonitoring, so mostly macros, but DES has like a whole thing that they have available. Like if you're just looking for like protocols and like that sort of thing, like test an X spot for X amount of minutes,
Yeah.
this amount of times. They've got, on their website, they've got that. They used to, I can't remember, VPAS, Volunteer Program
VRAP.
Typological Assessment or something?
I think it's VRAP.
Yeah, VRAP, yeah.
VE.
So they have something, Green Mountain Conservation Group does a whole lot of, they've got like their own whole protocol stuff that they use, and they do a lot of monitoring down in the Ossipee area. And I think they have materials online as well.
Yeah, those were the people I ran into in the woods who, one of them was a Jacksonite and she was hiking with Green Mountain people and they're like, well, why don't you have monitoring in Jackson? We should have monitoring in Jackson. And they did suggest reaching out to Green Mountain.
Yeah, I think mostly because their outreach area is like they focus on the Ossipee Aquifer, is that the name of it? They focus on the lower southern half of the Saco.
I think the primary concern you have there, I mean, you can spend a ton of dollars having a lot of stuff sampled that is probably not essential. I mean, they become part of standards, but the critical thing you want to be testing, at least from my perspective, is coliform. Because we do have animals upstream and you do have a lot of people in the water there. Outside of that, it's a pretty good watershed of the,
So no-
most of the
no
chemicals you're gonna pick up there are most likely from the geology as opposed to, other issues. It's one of those things, if we really wanted to, we might put in the budget to have like 4 coliform samples done a year and, we just get the stuff and pay a firm to, send the samples to and have it done, but
Those are
Well, what's
usually.
that?
But I want a microscope.
But what about like the, stuff coming off the golf course? Like the things that they might put on that? I don't know.
once you get into that kind of organic,
Testing. Yeah.
you're into thousands of dollars quickly. You aren't gonna do that with a volunteer program.
Okay.
Amen. And I don't really think that Eagle spreads a lot of stuff because that's a pretty low maintenance golf course. It's anybody that's been down there in the summer, it's but once you're into that, you're into serious dollars. I can tell you that right now.
So the bacteria tests are roughly $30 each. That'd be
Yeah.
easy to do.
And it depends on whether you have both fecal and total done, but, I mean, I've done a lot of water sampling in my lifetime, but that's what I would recommend.
So you recommend the fecal and the coliform?
Well, fecal is
Just coliform.
the most, I mean, fecal coliform tests are for any warm-blooded animal, basically what it's testing for.
Yeah, they usually do both together. Like if you're doing drinking water, they're looking for both total coliforms and E. coli specifically.
What about sediment? Because I know that's what Phil Davies was testing for when he did it years ago. He was
The time you're gonna
testing
get
for
sediment is you'd have to have somebody who's going down for tests right after heavy rain. So it's not like I just, you're going out every 2 weeks and doing a sampling. You're gonna sample when you'd expect that kind of event. We do get sediment movement at that time, and then you would get back to, okay, I mean, it does run, when you have a real heavy rainstorm, you will see sediment moving down, but then the second question is, okay, you got sediment, now what's the cause? And then you're gonna have to chase it back. Sediment movement is not unnatural. It's a question of whether you're getting a lot of excessive unnatural sediment movement. Living on Great Brook as well as being down by the river, I would say that, the risk of that is pretty low. It's typically when you get a lot of logging roads. Logging roads are classic for a lot of heavy sediment runoff because they're typically just not well built to hold sediment. We don't have a lot of that, in this watershed with logging roads that are gonna be sediment driven. Once in a while you may have a few others, but I wouldn't spend a lot of dollars on sediment. It's my perspective.
Ben, we have a plankton tow and microscopes at work, so you can come on over anytime. We'll hop in a canoe and go around Chicora Lake and we can play with the plankton tow.
Let's see,
Yeah,
see what
plankton
moves.
tow.
I just bought a plankton tow. I'm super excited about it. I haven't had a chance to use it yet,
It's
but
a plankton what?
a plankton tow. It's like it looks like a big net,
Yeah.
and it's what I've always used it for is I tie it to the back of a canoe with kids, and then we paddle around and then pull it up and see what you can see underneath the microscope.
There's a lot of zooplankton and phytoplankton.
Yeah.
Great stuff to look at.
It's super cool.
That
Yeah.
sounds like fun.
Well, awesome. I have
But-
to schedule a field trip.
Do we want to spend money and sample a couple times for coliform? I think is the question out there.
Or do we want to find there's programs that,
I think it's a good idea. I think, and maybe I should do it or someone should do it. We should look again through the management plan and see if there's anything that's definitive that we should be testing that's in there. And I don't think there was when I looked, but now I don't remember.
Okay.
But I think we should just double check and be like, okay, like, these are the things we have to test, these are the things we don't have to test. This is how, when I looked
You
at it.
can go on DES's website, you can go back and you can take a look at all the water quality sampling that's been registered with them.
Okay.
It's very large grained though. I've looked at that.
Yeah, I did too.
very large,
Like it's a large sample size. It's not, you can't like drill down, like if you were like, I want to look in this particular body or,
Well, actually, some places you can.
but it tends to be more southern tier. I looked
Yeah.
at, they're just, it exists, but it's not granular enough
Yeah.
to be kind of useful.
If I remember right, in the CRMP, there's like an appendix where it shows everything they tested, what the results were, but I don't remember. I mean, a lot of it was like high-end, expensive chemical tests. But what I don't remember is if it said like, these are the things that have to continue to be monitored.
Okay.
Well, there is no have to, that's,
Okay, maybe that's why I couldn't find it.
the
Okay.
state goes around periodically because they have very limited funds to do this, and typically it's when they get an EPA grant or something, where they'll do a lake survey and then 10, 15, 20 years ago, they'll get another grant and sort of cover. And a number of the streams periodically across the state are just randomly sampled, and you correct the southern part of the state because that's where the larger population is, does have a more dense, and that's some of what the VRAP is, and it's the same as the lake monitoring system where you get volunteers on the lake who will consistently get samples and send them down to the state, and I think they have to actually come up with the money for some of the chemistry to be done. And that will pop up and populate, but it is kind of hit and miss out there. But I would say that, you know, when you have something that you really suspect that's a problem, then you go in and you start to design a monitoring program that would take a look at it. When I take a look, the things that we have up here is you do have animals upstream. Some of those animals are quite close. It's quite likely you get bacteria movement down through there at times. And you have the public interacting in those waters. That's the thing I would focus in on.
Okay.
But you can spend money just doing copper or zinc.
I
And
think
when you get into the organics,
I think
you're
it'd be
in.
interesting to do some of that and just.
there is
You're
some
su-
that's
that
been
you're
done.
suggesting for the coliform, the fecal, that sort of thing on a regular basis and just see what you find, just to
Yeah.
start with. Because, you know, you're saying do something when you notice a problem, but it might be better to see what's there and anticipate before it becomes a problem, just making.
We're just having an established baseline.
Yeah.
Well, you
That's a
you
good
have
way of
some of
putting
that
it.
now, because there was some sampling done before. And actually, there is a sample site on the Wildcat. If you're going out Boggy Brook, the Forest Service actually has a sample site. If you look on the side of the bridge, there's.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah. That's not chemistry, but, and that is with some of their research on trout and that sort of stuff that's up there, yeah. But when I looked at the values, these are relatively clean waters that are coming down through for the most part.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think relevant would be the coliform testing, so.
The
I'll-
baseline would be a really good idea, I think. Be kind of interesting to see what it is.
And I think we have some
I think we
baseline that
would
exists there
expect to see
already.
How old is that? And is that coming from the Boggy Brook? Is that what you're saying?
No, there is some that was done. I have to go back and look.
That would be interesting. If we have a baseline, how old is it?
Right. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
My guess is that if we're testing for coliform, generally we would be getting positive coliform because it's pretty common in surface water. And we would not be seeing E. coli unless there was something weird going on with the way that fecal matter is getting into the stream. But it's pretty, you know, generally, when you're well testing, coliform is used as an indicator that surface water has gotten into your well water. So I think it's generally assumed that it's just in surface water, all of the many different species.
Your cheap and inexpensive way of finding out whether you've got a problem there for many minerals, et cetera, is to actually do conductivity measurements. Because these are very low ionic waters, and if you're starting to get chemicals moving in, your concentration will, the conductivity of the water will go up rather quickly.
What does that mean?
It's the ability of the water, these waters here are almost distilled water, which means its ability to conduct electricity is very, very poor. If you start to get more salts in there, it'll conduct electricity much better, and that's the measurement you use. But typically when you measure these, it's one step above distilled water.
I almost bought a YSI meter this year, which can do that, but they're like $1,000. And I was like, it's probably not a good idea.
like your gadgets, don't you?
It's fun, kids like it. It's cool.
It's a cheap way that they actually look for along lake shorelines and stuff, is whether you get a lot of
What?
salts coming in
YSI?
from
YSI meters.
so
That's like
this
the
is-
branch. That's like the YSI is like the-
Desalination.
whatever. I think like-
well, yeah, I mean, basically conductivity.
That's what it's called.
And that works well in low conductivity waters, which is what we
So
have.
how
They're
do you
like the
measure
probes you
conductivity?
drop in,
Just take a
it's like-
sample and
can
send
tell
it?
Well, you
everything in
need
10
a
seconds.
monitor, or
Yeah.
you can send a sample.
Ooh, so you're saying there's a machine, a device you can get that would monitor the conductivity?
Oh, yeah,
Like a pH thing, you just stick it in there, like, oh.
Conductivity is almost as simple as pH, that's why it's a very inexpensive.
How much did you see it cost?
It's about $1,000 bucks.
Well, like like $1,000, like the YSI, like their meters are like a probe you drop in and it'll tell you everything you want to know, pH, temperature, DO.
The only thing I would point out on a conductivity meter is it's actually, because you're working, in the same is true with pH, is you can buy a pH meter, but if you don't buy the right kind of probe for low conductivity waters, which is what you have here, you can get some goofy measurements. Just like with pH paper, when you're using it in this kind of water here, you're measuring the acidity of the paper, not of the water itself.
Okay. As much as I like talking about
Interesting.
toys
Yeah.
and tools. Conservation easements, police fire reports.
She can text.
right, no wetlands, business. I just printed up another draft, a second draft, some of the changes we made. I don't know why it's so, well, I guess it is what it is. It doesn't have to be super reported. Well,
I think it's very nice.
I guess
I do too.
in my volunteering things, it's like, people need to be recognized for the things that they give, but it also seems to be like and thank you, and thank you, and thank you. Like, oh, we didn't really do a lot, but I'm thanking a lot of people, so. But
Sometimes it's the acknowledgements that allow us to do the things we want to do, so.
Yeah, that was fine, that was good.
Yeah.
well, that was in one of the, I can't remember what, I think it was in one of the garden documents that the state had, talking about managing garden volunteers
Mhm.
and just being like, they're the most valuable asset in the thing, and people want to volunteer, and they want to see that their time is being well used, and that they're being, that they're appreciated or acknowledged for what they're doing. So I think that's my
Mhm.
high fives for everyone. So,
Right.
I was very interested in the facilities committee questionnaire. I thought it was going to be a lot more detailed in information that they were looking for. I had to get, yeah. So I guess we'll see what happens when it comes out, if they get any statistically relevant things that, we might be able to weigh in on. But I think looking at their list of town properties as a way of thinking about, there are things that are not on this agenda that are part of Jackson, that either, where does it fall in our overview, or like things like the highway department. I imagine everything kind of gets swept under them, like the veteran triangle, like those sort of things, like small, or the roadside, maintenance things, cutting, when things get cut, because I know it's come to us where we've asked, can you not cut in particular areas, or not hydro-ax, or if it would be easier. So if we were to have a better communication with them, or be on their calendar a little bit more, so we can be aware of when they're going to be doing cutting, or, that's, I guess from the facilities committee, is like, we just need to be talking to each other a little bit more.
Then when I looked at it, I was like you, I was a little surprised at how generic it was. It was too generic. I mean, you can put down trying to force the people to get into a certain direction, and you can be too vague. And I think they were vague because they wanted not to be telling people what, but they wanted people to tell them what. But it was so vague that I'm not sure they're gonna get what they really want. But when I looked at that, and I looked at the town properties, and I kind of look at where we are, climate change is a real issue. The Inflation Reduction Act makes it much more lucrative for the town to move ahead, put more solar on its facilities. And I spent a little bit of time just looking at Google Earth and, what buildings made sense and what doesn't. Like the Whitney Center does, part of the school does. There are other buildings that don't because of the orientation of the roof and so on and so forth. But the Inflation Reduction Act also makes it much more lucrative for towns to put in solar today compared to the way that it was put on this building here, because the town, I'm not even sure, actually gets true credits for this, because Revision puts it in, takes all the recs. And it's a funky thing, and I won't spend a lot of time going through it. But the town does have the ability to go in, and before municipalities and nonprofits couldn't take advantage of this, but they can now. I know it's the same thing is true with AMC, with the Cardigan facility, etc. Those recs actually don't go to AMC, they went off to the grid.
What are the recs that you're talking about?
Renewable energy credits, as to who actually gets to claim the credit. And when the town put it in here, and that was the revision model, is they own, and then you buy the power from them, as opposed to you owning it and getting all of the energy credits. And then they sell those off, and certain entities have to have a certain percentage of renewables that are purchased. The Inflation Reduction Act, starting next January, allows towns to put in solar and to take 30% off the cost direct, which they couldn't before because municipalities and non-profits don't have any profits, which is where the tax credits came in from in the earlier way that I put it on my house and other people put it on their house. So there's a real opportunity for the town to move ahead in the next couple of years. And it does a double because with the way that the rates on the electric market have gone sky high, it's doubly lucrative to the town because it reduces its true electric bill moving out. But I would think that we would want to be pushing the town to seriously take a look at adding more solar under the conditions that the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed by the Biden administration has kicked in.
So when you say take 30% off direct, are you talking about 30% off their electrical bill?
No, 30% off the cost of having it put in. So you're paying 70 cents on the dollar when you put it in. And that's true of individuals as well.
And
But-
the idea of the town to get the recs.
You own the system, and as opposed to what's happening right now is they just have a rate that they're paying for the electric power for having that solar array up there, which can be better than maybe what you're getting on the market, but that's the way that the system operates. But the town doesn't own, I don't believe the town owns these, just as AMC doesn't own the Cardigan facility.
Yeah, and I think it varies by organization too, whether you're just interested in controlling your own price of electricity,
Yep.
separate from any carbon credits you might be getting for it. You know, because like the town might not, I mean, might care in principle, but not might care practically if they get carbon credits, as long as their electric bill is being reduced
Yeah.
by solar.
But you get both, in this,
Yeah.
the way that this has come in.
So would it be,
I mean, the facilities the town has is, for example, the Whitney Center. I think there's possibilities. I don't, the old dump, you could put ground facilities there. I don't know whether the lines going up there are capable of taking the power out of there because you're getting way up on, and I mean, you have to look when you put in a facility is, that's great to have a facility there, but if you're putting it onto the co-op's grid to come down to pay for these buildings, which you could, but if the lines can't take it, then it's not economical. But the Whitney Center, I think would be a classic example, because, I mean, this is 3-phase that's actually going around here and up to Black Mountain, so there's no question that, you know, the lines can take it.
so I guess would that be a question of looking at using town open space for those sorts of projects, or trying to build on top, essentially?
For the town to take a serious look at where it would make economic sense for them to take advantage of this.
Isn't the planning board trying to come up with some sort of a
Yes.
solar,
That's different.
because it's not town?
No, it's more of trying to restrict, I mean, my wife's on the planning board, so I know what it, but that is more to try to prevent some big commercial entity from coming in and knocking the forest down and putting a huge solar farm in is really what it's,
My understanding,
it's a level thing.
I was gonna say it's more in response to what happened in Lovell, and what's also kind of happening for Evergreen through it too.
And yet in many sense, it's a non-issue because it's all rural residential and that would be a commercial use, so by our zoning, that thing would probably be illegal anyways, but that doesn't.
So I guess that kind of circles back to that same point that I was making, was if we're going in a direction with larger projects in open space, like the dump space or anywhere else, that we would have any input as to.
We would be encouraging the facility committee to take a look at where it might be most appropriate to put additional solar and take advantage of the financial terms that are out there now, which are different than before.
Are you saying then though, like on the one hand, we might want to encourage solar, but on the other hand, we don't want to encourage like Gray's Inn being smushed for solar panels kind of thing on town property?
I'm just looking at where our input is relevant, so, you know, we don't have any say over what happens to this building or on any other
Yeah.
Well, like,
physical structure.
the library doesn't make sense, because the roof is probably oriented the wrong way. The Whitney Center, the roof is oriented the correct way.
Has to be oriented east-west
No, more south.
or something.
Depends.
Every roof doesn't work.
It depends.
You get the most direct solar from facing south. You can sometimes get more valuable hours if you do face east or west. So you're getting the morning and the evening sunlight when there's greater demand. And you can have less total return off your panel for more valuable hours for the grid.
So, I mean, with that in mind, like, I guess taking things off of the table, I guess looking at the list of total properties, like, everything here on our agenda list that, like, is not going to see any sort of solar activity. There's not gonna be solar at Prospect, there's not gonna be, you know, the old dump site would be the only kind of candidate where we would have input into that. Would that be?
Or the buildings. The cheapest is to put it on the roofs, because.
Right, and that's where I'm getting to, is like, well, that seems like physical structure maintenance is some other department.
I think what we would be doing as a conservation commission is encouraging the
Recommend.
facilities. We would be recommending that they take a serious look about where additional town facilities could be used to add on additional solar for the municipalities' electric use.
Okay.
And that would be Whitney and Lamoon Road.
No specific recommendations as to siting.
No, I wouldn't at this point, because as I say, the town dump is up there, but nobody's done the homework yet to ask whether that line could actually even take it if you're generating it.
Okay.
We're recommending that homework.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how, I don't know when they had a deadline to report anything.
It's December 1st was the question here, but
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything preventing us from sending a letter that the Conservation Commission is encouraging the Facilities Committee
Okay.
to take a look.
Well, I can send an email to Barbara, just
Yeah.
kind of testing, seeing where they're at. And, okay, I'll do that then.
Is Tom, is AMC looking at using the Inflation Reduction
I
Act?
don't know.
Yeah.
I would assume, but.
Yeah.
We're not, we got nowhere else to put them.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
Here
here
we go. We got solar panels everywhere, including some ground mounts now, so.
And then at the Jackson Field Station.
At the field station would be a possibility, but that thing uses so little electricity that it would be like, it'd be like a nice thing, but it's not, because one of Rockwell's a private house, and then the field station is 400 square feet, there's like 2 lights in it.
Right. Okay, well, I'll see where they're at, and I think we can just kind of
Yeah,
continue discussing long-term planning, but
we're just cheerleaders for
solar.
getting them to take a serious look at what advantages may be out there.
Okay,
Because the Inflation Reduction Act does change the game for municipalities and nonprofits.
excellent. Is there anything else?
The only other thing was the tile ski area.
Oh, yeah, please go
Just
ahead.
putting it out there to see if anybody wants to buy a mountaintop with 3 developed buildings. And put the mountaintop into conservation, so.
Because I think I heard you say that the thing with Upper Saco fell through.
Yeah, they couldn't do it fast enough, so they were hoping to get an angel donor. But there might be somebody else out there in Jackson that might be interested and with a conservation ethic that would like to acquire Mountaintop and then sell off the developed properties. So I think you could find people who would buy the chalet, the base lodge and the garage, and leave the Upper Saco Valley with the 200 acres of the Mountaintop.
And that must totally abut the future Dundee forest, right?
That's the idea, I think it hooks up with it.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense for Upper Saco Valley to have that, continuity.
I'll I'll go home and check the couch cushions.
There you go.
I got 3 million laying around.
Yeah, somebody needs to email Brian.
I'll let you know.
Okay.
Buy a few more lottery tickets.
Yeah.
Somebody might actually watch our Valley videos and say, I know somebody.
Sorry. It brings up a good point. If the town website used to have a map, which I think Upper Saco Valley Land Trust did, of both conserved and areas of interest to be conserved in town. And I believe they're updating or have just recently.
They did, I looked on the website.
Yeah, they got a new strategic. Yeah.
And I'm wondering if we, out of that, if our town, like, we'll get basically a town map that would have things like that would, you know, point out like, oh, hey, here's a conservation opportunity for someone who's interested in a different form. And I didn't know how that worked, how the tenure process works, or if we are how it
They
worked
have
the first
an arc.
time, if we contracted with Upper Saco Valley Land Trust to do that for us once upon a time.
I think
as a
you can go
conservation-
online and do it right now.
Yeah.
It's posted online.
Okay.
I took a look at
And
it.
it has like areas of specific.
I didn't drill down, but it's a little clunky, but when I looked at it, you know, it has where your aquifers are and this, that, and the other, and then it has where their priority areas are through there. And then you can start to put in, like based on New Hampshire fishing games, you know, priority areas 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. I didn't drill down to that level, but they just announced it in the paper and I just dragged it up for a few minutes to take a look at it quick to see what it is, but I think a lot of it is there. As opposed to having to pay them to do what you go
Yeah.
online and take a look at. And the fish and game, you know, priority areas, you want to get that map real simple.
That is an interesting thought, though, to have an actual map that we could show people and be like, hey, here's the most critical, like, this
Because
is...
That was actually done a number of years ago for the town.
Oh, yeah, when they came and did the forums? That, or the...
There was and I forget her name, she did it as a master's thesis or whatever, but she did do some of analysis, it's a little out of date.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think that still is on the town website. And I think one of the things the Conservation Commission is supposed to do is like maintain the
Yeah.
conservation.
Hers is
priorities
outdated because the fish and game
in town.
data files and that have been updated over time. I mean, Dave and I used to work on that all the time for Northern Forest Lands, and those data sets get updated, and then you need to update them periodically. And lands get conserved, but you can go on the state GIS system and see all the protected lands in town. That's easy to do. In fact, I think the Upper Saco shows it.
Upper Saco has one that you can look at all
Yeah.
their easements plus additional preserved lands.
The state will tell you who the easement holders are. Upper Saco only shows it as conserved, and then which ones, you can drill down to their parcels and get the further information on their parcels.
Okay. Hank, anything?
I don't.
Can I ask a favor of you after we're done? If you can take a picture of us?
It's just not the stills.
I have a camera.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Or we can do it with a phone. It doesn't have to be fancy, but, so if there's anything, or if anyone has anything else, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
But
All right.
I don't have